Hello, welcome to Saturday Service, a podcast all about faith and football with me, Graham Boozy, in association with the Live Streams Churches in Southend-on-Sea, England. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Mr. Leif Hunter. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, enjoying the wonderful weather we got here in England.
Oh, yeah, it's perfect, man. Been sunbathing all week. Firstly, just to begin with, you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've played football and I do call it football. Considering the accent, I know sometimes you think I'd be saying the S word, but we'll avoid that. But yeah, I've played football surprisingly not that long. I started when I was 14. It didn't really come from a football family. And ironically enough, when we're gonna talk about faith today, it didn't really come from a Christian family either. So two things that didn't really start with and kind of found along the way. So yeah, I started when I was about 14 and played in America. I've played at all sorts of levels. MLS Next Pro, been with League Two clubs, and then I've just recently played a season in the Welsh Prem, which was kind of hindered due to some injuries and stuff. And now we're looking to go abroad. Obviously, I have some don't want to spoil too much, but I got some stuff out in Germany and other countries like that, and working with some really talented people to get me out there. So yeah, football's a fun sport. I really enjoy it, and it's become a passion for me, and it's become I think for many people, it's one of those things when you can chase it and you have a chance to play at a professional level, it's you do everything you can to try and chase it.
Yeah, because it's funny, when I was researching this whole thing, it suddenly made me realise how old I was. My brain's still stuck on USA 94, and I was trying to sort of wonder about football culture in America because obviously it is majorly dominated by NFL, NBA, and things like that. And so I guess I was a bit intrigued as to how a lad from America first gets into football. Was there a particular moment that you thought, oh, this is pretty good? Or did you play other sports?
So I have a huge spoiler. My dad is actually English, and so he was the one. My first World Cup I can remember was the 2010 World Cup. That was the first World Cup that I was, like, sentient enough to to remember, and like I said, I wasn't into football really till I was probably a lot older than that, but my dad, he supported England, obviously, as you do, and I remember watching and this is, like, one of my first memories, core memories. It was Lampard versus Germany, I think in the round of 16 or quarterfinals, something like that, and he chips Neuer, and it hits the crossbar and goes down. I'm sure most people know what I'm talking about. And I remember my dad just losing his head, and that's one of my earliest memories of life in general, but football too. And then for me, that to actually get into football was the Euros 2016, and that was the first time where I went, "Ooh, okay, this is pretty cool." Because before that, I'd played a lot of sports. Obviously, like you said, in America, we have so many options for sports. You have American football, baseball, basketball. I did boxing. There was so many different sports that we could all do and play. And obviously, it was all, it was one of those where you kind of get the pick of the bunch. And when you go to school and you go to PE, what sport we're gonna play today? And for me, like I said, I growing up, I loved American football, I loved baseball, I loved boxing. Those were kind of the sports I did, as a kid and into a teenager. And then I remember at that 2016 Euros, it was we lost to Iceland. England lost to Iceland in the Euros, and I remember watching that, and I felt this just like rage. I don't know, probably not the right word, but I was just so angry watching. I was sitting there like, dang, what? How did we lose that? And I then remember watching that season. It was Joe Hart was the keeper for England, and I remember seeing how much like slate he got from that because obviously I think he made a mistake in that game versus Iceland, and I was like, okay, yeah, he made a mistake, but did we not just see it? We just lost to Iceland. Like who? They got
Yeah.
like some random plumber. How are we losing that? And so I remember being like, "Dang, what's going on here?" It really intrigued me. So I watched Joe Hart, and that season he went to Torino, and that's when I think my love for I don't know, and it's such a weird story to tell, but that's where my love for football really was like. I was watching Torino games week in week out, and I was watching Joe Hart play, and at the same time, I got into youth football and I started playing. playing at like it's a club called TC United with some of my mates, and funny enough, they all played football. I was the odd one out. They'd played since they were 6. Little kids. They'd always played it, which was always funny because they're American, and the half English kid had never even was football. And so I joined up with them, and we started playing together. I had some of my first coaches I can remember. I had this guy called Kevin, just an awesome dude. Still friends with him to this day. I still chat. And then, I remember playing there. And then one of my friends, this lad's named Teo, his dad was named Tony. He coached the big select team. In America, obviously, it's a lot different in America compared to over here in England, where obviously here in England, you have academy football, grassroots football. It's all kind of done properly. Obviously, in America, you have select soccer, which is just paid to play. It's diabolical. It's such a bad system. We could have a whole 2-hour interview about how much I dislike that. But at the end of the day, whatever. And I remember being like, "Whoa, this is cool. Okay, I can work with this." This is because I remember joining up with Tony's team, and I got to play with my friends. I got to play with my best mate Chris Whitener, who again still friends with to this day. Baller, by the way, absolute incredible player. I sometimes joke about this little tangent, and I do a lot of little tangents. But if he hadn't have gotten injured, he had a very serious knee injury. I know everyone every unk has that story. Oh, my D didn't break, I would have gone pro. But he genuinely one of those players that like, okay, no, no. If he didn't get injured, he would have been playing at a professional level. I 100% mean that. He would have been playing D1, MLS, no doubt in my mind. So growing up playing with them and getting to play with my friends and getting to do all these select tournaments, I really fell in love with it. I think from those ages, kind of 16, and again, for over here, that'd be considered old. That's when some people are making their debuts and making, professional plays, and I'm there playing at TC United. And so that's where it kind of started, that chase. And that's where I was like, okay, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. And I was always gonna be starting on the back foot, obviously starting so late, it was always gonna be difficult. And then I, had a few more difficulties down the line, but as I kind of got into it and more and played, I had all these great coaches and these people come and help me, and they were kind of pushing me along the journey. And it was I think that really made me, I'd say, fall in love with football. That was the one that, especially when I had my first trials for like MLS Next, and I was really starting to push and push into like the professional sphere. And when I finally got it and made it to that, it was these coaches and these teammates that were like, we believe in you. We think you can do that. And I think sometimes I always say this, I think sometimes people always have I want to make it to the next level to prove people wrong kind of thing. And I think that's a great motivator. Trust me, there's plenty of coaches and plenty of players that I'd love to prove wrong. But for me, I think the best feeling about, having any success in football is proving the people correct that did believe in me. Because I've noticed so many times that, I'll get a message from my old high school coach, and he was like, "Wow, Leaf, saw that you'd done such and such. So proud of you." And I'm like, it just brings such a big smile to your face. And I think that's one of those things that I really love about football. And I think that's one of those things that I really enjoy about it is playing and meeting these people and traveling so much. Obviously, the travel would come a little bit later in my life, but it's one of those things that early on, that was right away what I loved was, hey, wow, seeing that group effort was wonderful, and it was something that I really enjoyed, and I think that's what kind of pushed my love for it. And obviously, like I said, I had some great coaches. Nate Salveson, he was my first real goalkeeper coach, and he, like I said, he carried me to relevancy. That guy was working with me every single day, trying to make me the best player I could be. And he knew my situation, started really late. Obviously, I'm not the tallest keeper. I'm only about 6'1", touching 6'2" on a good day. Not the tallest keeper in the world, especially back then. I wasn't that same height. I was probably like 5'4". But so I was on the shorter side. I was a little kind of pudgy kid, and I was trying to chase this crazy dream. And in all fairness, he believed, and he went, "Okay, I'm gonna work with you." And he really did. I would say Nate was one of those people that he really, really fought and helped me out massively. And it was going well, for all the way through my teenage years. Things were going well. Got to some really crazy high levels. And then obviously I had a couple health issues off the pitch, that kind of limited what I could do for a couple years. And it was one of those where, I built all this really good work. I had to step away from the game for a couple years, and I didn't really come back till I'd turned 21. And I finally was able to get back into the game. And it was like, "Oh, oh dear." So I've started late. I did really good, and now we stopped playing for a couple of years, and now we're trying to get back into the game. And that for me was like, "Darn, okay, well, what are we doing now?" And so at the ripe age of 21, this is when players are making their professional debuts. They've had professional careers for a couple years, Like I said, I have some friends that they were now making their MLS debuts. They were making USL championship debuts. They were making League Two debut. They were flying. And I'm sitting here, doing nothing. And it was a little bit disheartening, in a way, but it was one of those that I think I had a sit down conversation with my mom, and she's been my biggest supporter through everything, and she's been really, really on my side. And she was like, Leaf, from when you first started kind of chasing the football thing to when you stopped playing to when you came back, she's like, I see a spark in your eyes that I don't see when you're not playing. And she's like, I want to see that spark. I want to continue. And so when it comes down to it, our moms are always going to be big supporters of what we do, even if it's stupid stuff. They're still going to support. And I remember my mom would be driving she works, so she worked at a bar. So, she would be sitting there at 4 in the morning just getting off work, and she'd be driving me to my game on Saturday morning at 8 AM. On, like, 3 hours sleep, she's driving me 2 hours to my game, and that's just the kinda sacrifices she made for me, and so, with all that in mind, I decided at 21, I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna make that jump to England. We're gonna we're gonna get on that plane. We're gonna make this dream come true." Even if I've been out the game a couple years, even if things aren't going well, we're gonna get it done. We're gonna find out a way, we're gonna make it happen. And funny enough, around the same time is when I actually started finding my time with God and finding that connection that hadn't been there my whole life. Obviously, growing up, I was an atheist. My parents were atheists. My family, it was kind of normal, It was just like, oh yeah, yeah, whatever. And literally, it was one of those like 20 going on 21 when I decided to come back to football, when I decided to make these crazy big jumps. Some stuff had happened in my life, and I'm like, okay, I'm starting to think that there's a little more to this life than what meets the eye. And I've always been a very I have to make sure what I'm doing is like not correct, but I'm like, okay, let's do a little bit of research. And I researched, a lot of things. And the thing that kind of came to me was like, okay, out of all, there's hundreds of religions, there's hundreds of these things. What for me, like what's the one that like speaks to me the most? What's the one that like, oh, that's different? And that is Christianity. And for the simple fact of Jesus Christ, that's every other religion has all great, cool, great things. None of them have Jesus. And that for me was like, oh, okay. Because all these religions, they all kind of talk about Jesus. They all have this like, even if the Muslim religion with the Quran, Jesus was a prophet, awesome dude. You go to Buddhist, yeah, Jesus was a wise teacher. He knows what he was on about. Like all these different religions kind of say, yeah, Jesus, that dude knew knew what was up. But then you go to the Bible, and Jesus was like, "Yeah, I know what's up. And actually, to one up you, I am actually God. I am." So I'm like, "Okay, so if everyone's saying he's the right one, and then he says, 'Yeah, I'm the right one,' I'm gonna listen to that." And again, I would talk about my friend Chris Whitener, who I played football with growing up. He was a Christian, and he had grown up in a Christian household. And it was really nice to have that Christian friend there, especially when I started, because I kinda started asking him, I'm like, "Okay, what is this about? What is Christianity about? Tell me, what does it mean to pick up and carry my cross? What does that mean?" I was so intrigued by that. I'm like, "What does that mean?" What does what and it got all the gears in my head turning, and I was like, right away, I'm like, "Okay, I wanna learn more about this." And at the same time, while I'm trying to learn more about this, I had some really not so good stuff happen, in my home life that involved some of my family. I have family that have some mental health issues, and they struggle a little bit. and they had a really, really tough night involving just, drugs, and it was a whole thing. Don't wanna go into too much detail, but it was a really, really, really tough night, and I remember for the first time being like, "Okay, I'm gonna try and pray. I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna try and pray, I'm gonna try and see what I can do." And at that moment, I was like, "Whoa." I felt that Holy Spirit energy. I went, "Okay, that's different. That's different. Not used to that." And then speaking to my mate again, I'm like, "What is this? What? I don't understand any of this. I don't." And he said, "Okay, bet." And he sent me three or four videos, just like little simple Bible study videos. And I watched them and I started learning and I said, "Okay, okay, I'm picking this up. I like this. This might be something that I want to be a part of." And it really felt like God was revealing himself to me. He was really like, "Hey, you've been doing it your way. That ain't worked. Come try it. Try to do it the right way." And I come out to England. I'm living in Altrincham at the time. I'm with Salford. It was things are going pretty well, and I decided I'm gonna go to the church for the first time. I'm gonna make this jump. I'd never done it. I'd never been to church in my entire life, but here I was, ripe age of 21. I said, "This is gonna be it. This is gonna be the year I do it." And I ended up going to Altrincham Baptist Church. It's right it's in Altrincham. The pastor named Ash, by the way, wonderful, wonderful guy. Amazing dude. I could so many good stories to tell. And so I go there and I remember the first and like I said, it was my time at Salford was anything but anything but easy. I was struggling. I was jumping between training with the 18s and the reserves. I was not at my but again, I'd spent years out the game and I was trying to get back in. Obviously, it wasn't going to be, perfect. So I was in a terrible headspace. And I'm sitting in a church there and I always remember it because it was like, "Whoa, what the heck? This is different." And I'm sitting there and Ash, the pastor's beginning sermon, he's talking, he's going through it. And I'm sitting there listening, and then it's just like, "Whoa, he's talking about me right now," it feels like. Talking about, hey, trying to do everything on your time, trying to do everything on what you want. You want it to all be you, you, you. That's not how it works. You need to have patience. You need to be able to wait. And I remember sitting there and being like, "Whoa, this feels like this is targeted towards me. What the heck? This is different." And I remember speaking to Ash after, and I'm like, "Wow, that was an amazing, really amazing sermon. I really enjoyed that. I want to learn more." And from there, that's when it really began. I would say is like, okay, I got myself a Bible, began studying, began trying to learn as much as I possibly could. And I think as a footballer, this is one of those things that I'm sure you've probably had this conversation 100 times, almost separating football and our faith because it's very hard because sometimes I think you can idolize football and you make that your entire existence is being a footballer. Like that's it. Like that's you idolize it. And with faith, don't be idolizing stuff that ain't me, right? And that's what Jesus says. It's one of those big kind of things is hey, don't go idolizing things. Because you almost have to think of it. One of my favorite ever quotes is by Tim Tebow. He was a fantastic, fantastic athlete, but an even better human being and even better when it comes to faith. And he said, my biggest regret would be getting to heaven, and my biggest achievement was I threw a pigskin. You know, my biggest regret would be getting to heaven well rested and meeting Jesus and being like, I didn't really do that much. I threw a football around. And for me, it'd be, I kicked a football around. And so it is so hard to separate the two because I think you do have to separate the two in terms of you can't idolize football. You have to look at it. For me, you have to look at it as a game because it is so easy to idolize it. You train, you eat, you sleep, and everything I do, you revolve around football, especially when you're at that professional level. Your entire existence is idolizing football. Like I said, eat, train, sleep, all focus on that. And if you allow that to just become the main proprietor of your life, your faith, it's gonna start lacking and it's gonna show. And that has been, I think for me and most athletes, is one of the hardest things as a Christian athlete, I think, is not letting your sport idolize. And I think at the end of the day, it's you don't want it to be your entire existence, but it kind of becomes that, because it's all you're doing is playing it. And so for me, that's been one of the hardest battles. That's been one of the hardest battles. As I've made it, like I said, I started finding my faith at an older age. Started playing football at older ages. It took. I'm like a wine. Took some time to marinate, but find all these things later and having to kind of make all these lessons at an older age. And as I went on, I would then go back to America, and then again, I think when I went back to America for the first time after being in England, my faith was strengthened. I went to the church with my mate Chris, and when we had Bible studies, and really my faith started to grow a whole lot from there. Like that was like a whoa, okay, now we're growing, now we're getting there. And football wise, it was going well. I played a college season, got injured, of course, dislocated my shoulder, which was super annoying, but happens to the best of us. Played through that. Then I kept kind of chugging along a little bit, made to the end of the season playing all right. Like I said, when you only have one arm, it's kind of hard to be a goalkeeper. And from there, again, football was going well, and I was able to jump up into pretty good levels. USL 2, got to train with Sounders. Stuff was bumping. It was good. And then I came out here again, thinking like, okay, this is gonna be the time now. Obviously, joined Bala Town. They were a really really fantastic club. Nothing but positive stuff to say about them. Really tough season, obviously. Not ideal what happened, but sometimes when you're put in the situation they were put in, I think they did really, really well, and it was a shame not to be more a part of it more on the field, but obviously, like I said, injured pretty much most of the season. I joined pretty late and then got injured 3 times, relatively back to back to back, and then that's the thing is, okay, this is why it's so important not to idolize football is you get injured and you're like, "Oh my gosh, my entire life is over. What do I do?" You start losing your head. You're mentally just out of it. At the time, I was like, especially in that this January, I was just so mentally detested. Like, oh, what am I doing? I wasn't happy with my living situation. I was having to work another job to pay for stuff while playing football. And you're like, that's not what a professional footballer does. What am I doing right now? This is terrible. And it kind of all added up to me being like, this sucks. I am not happy right now. And that's when it's so important. I think that's when it's so important to make sure you are in tune with your faith because if you just idolize that football and football goes bad, you're gonna just feel miserable. Whereas if you're in tune with your faith and you're in touch with Jesus and it's no matter what happens in life, it doesn't matter. You're you have the most important relationship, the most important thing on your side. Life could be as bad as physically possible. I mean, obviously we read about in the Bible, Job and all that. Does not get worse. But if you have faith, it's important. And that's all that really matters. And so for me, that's one of those where it's like, okay, that's this year's really taught and this season of my life really taught me that. And I met while I was in Manchester, I met this guy called Tim who does a lot of missionary work and he's very connected to the church. And he spoke to me and he'd have little sit down coffees with me. Shout out the last track, wonderful little cafe. Love that place. But he'd have little sit downs with me and he'd talk about faith and he would often say, hey, you're going through a tough season right now, but you've been through tougher seasons. And he's like, as long as you keep that main focus, which is Jesus, you keep that front and center, nothing else really matters. Like at the end of the day, you keep that front and center, everything else will fall into place. And and I listened to him. And like I said, things started going well, shoulders healed, ready to go training again. Obviously, now I'm down here in Norwich getting a nice couple weeks off, enjoy the summer vacation. And then I have a really, really exciting proposition next season, which I'm stoked, can't wait to be a part of. And that all came from the ability to say, okay, hey, life's not going my way, but Jesus is so much more powerful than any little, nook and cranny on earth that can try and drag us down. That if I stay with him and I stay connected with him and I keep that relationship strong, it will make a difference. And it has, it has made a difference. I think in my life now, it's been one of those things is you find Christianity, you find God, and then you struggle a little bit sometimes because then you kind of go lukewarm and then your faith's really strong and then drops off and you're kind of in this little wave of trying to find exactly okay what do I do how do I make this and For me, that's, it's been a struggle for the last 2, 3 years is trying to find that balance almost. And I know it's probably not the right way to phrase that, but it's to find that, how can I give my life to Christ? And that's that part is like, okay, I wanna just give my life to Christ, but how do I do that? What do I do? How do I'm not sure. I'm losing my mind a little bit here. And sometimes, like I said, you have these really strong seasons of super strong faith where you're in the Bible every day. You're praying every single day and you feel you're like, I'm on top of this right now. And sometimes in those moments, God can be his quietest. You're like, okay, I'm in my Bible every day. I feel like I should be hearing you a little bit more. And then sometimes when you're at your absolute lukewarm, praying maybe once a week, you're not doing any Bible study, you're not doing any of that. You hear him and you're like, what kind of like, what are you doing, dog? So it's like it's one of those in it where it's like it's really, really difficult. It is a really, really difficult thing. And I think it's so easy to lose faith. It is very, very, especially in the world that we live in. You see so many terrible things. You feel terrible things, and you're just like, oh, what am I like? What do I do? But at the end of the day, Jesus spoke about these things. He said, "Hey, the world kind of sucks." Spoiler alert: it's not great. It kind of stinks a little bit, and that's the whole reason you got to come to me. And I do think that the best decision of my life was picking up that cross and carrying it, even if sometimes I like to make the analogy I drop it and I'm struggling to pick it back up and get it back on the shoulder to carry it more. But it does make a difference because, you can sit here and like I said, I plenty of hard times down in my life. And no matter what, I can say, okay, I have Jesus on my side. Makes it okay, makes it worth living, makes it worthwhile. And it allows me to continue even when things are down, even when things aren't going well. And it allows you to keep a humbleness when things are going really well. When things are going great, God can take this away. So I'm gonna enjoy it, but I'm never gonna get arrogant. I'm never gonna let that ego grow. And that's one of those things in it. And it's just like it's so much for us to kind of comprehend. And I've had this chat with my friends before. It's a lot to comprehend. It's not easy by any means. And so it's been a really good journey so far with kind of my football and faith. And there's so many little pieces you can add to that and so many little nuances you can conversate about those things.
I'm always interested. Firstly, number one, you chose to be. I don't know if you chose to be a goalkeeper. I don't know whether that was something that sort of just naturally happened, but that is the most isolating, brutal position on the pitch. Genuinely, a midfielder can misplace a pass, fall over, and it's all right. People might even laugh. But as soon as a goalkeeper, you are leapt upon for every little error. And yeah, I just guess I'm intrigued as to why you do that to yourself a little bit. I don't know.
So being completely honest, like I said, when I started 14, 15, I was a chubby little kid, right? Running was not in the cards. We were not gonna be running around. So because of that, it just wasn't in the cards. We weren't gonna be sprinting down. And like I said, I had a background, with boxing, a little bit of it. I hand-eye coordination was fine. So I was like, okay, we can catch a ball. It kind of just made sense. And like I said, watching the Euros and I'm watching Joe Hart. When I was younger, Joe Hart was a huge inspiration for me. And I was like, yeah, we'll be a goalkeeper. That makes the most sense, doesn't it? I guess. And so I went with that. And now, looking back on it, I love it. I absolutely love it. I think the pressure and the idea of like, oh, hey, I mess up, I lose my team in the game. I love that. It's so much fun. So much fun. There's nothing more fun than being in a game. I'm thinking about last summer I was playing in a USL 2 game and massive crowd playing against the Portland Bangers. By the way, awesome team, cool mascot, really cool setup. They're doing great this season. But we're playing against them, and it's like a 1,500 person crowd. Guys one on one in goal, shoots it. I make the save, and you can hear the crowd kind of go, "Oh!" and it deflates the crowd a little bit. And you get up, and you can see the strikers like hand. And I don't know why. Absolutely love that. Huge, huge fan of that. And I think that's for me is one of those things it's been what I'm passionate about. It's how I love, scoring a goal would be awesome. I'll probably do that once or twice in my career. Ball playing goalkeeper, you never know. But the feeling, like I said, of saving a penalty when it matters most, even at the end of the day, just keeping a clean sheet. When you're walking off that field, you're like, wow, that feels great. I love that. And so I've done it for this long. I'm stuck with it. I'm happy. I enjoy it.
So I guess it's not so much about building up endurance to the bad side. You crave the positive aspects of it more than anything. And obviously, I appreciate you have got an English connection, but I'm always really intrigued because I see, I'm really sad, by the way. I will dig into stats and things like that. And you see a lot of players will just go to every country on the earth seeking a professional contract or, a place to play football. I was wondering, how does the mechanism work, for example, that, how does an American lad playing college football then go and find himself at Salford City or Bala Town and things like that?
I'm very persistent. So, when I came over to England, I met a man named Liam Stonley, who was the goalkeeper coach at the time of the reserves at Salford. Got into contact with him and was like, "Hey, need a goalkeeper?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll need you here in like, a week." Is that cool? I said, "Okay, bet, I'll be there." So like I said, upped and moved, got everything, boom, went over there to Salford and started, and pretty much the same thing when I went to Bala Town. I was like, "Hey, need a goalkeeper. Would you be interested? You'll be number two, pushing to be number one. Just need some challenge." I'm like, "Yep, bet, I'll be there." Boom, fly, bang, I'm there. And but as a footballer, I feel like that's kind of normal. Usually it's if you want to play at a professional level, if you want to play at a high level, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. And that is the one thing about football that I think is the biggest, for me so far, has been the biggest blessing and curse is because of football, I've gotten to travel the world. I've gotten to go to England, to Spain, I've gotten to go all these countries, and I've gotten to play all around these countries and do all these amazing things. And it's been wonderful. I've absolutely loved it. But I also, had to leave all my family and friends behind. And then I make new friends, and then I have to leave them behind. I build up bonds with these teammates, and then I'm skedaddling, boom, leaving you guys behind. So, like I just left Manchester and I've been there for the last 8 months. And I was like, oh, dang, you know what? I've like really am going to miss this. I've made all these friends. Like I said, there's a little cafe last track I'd go into like every other day. Well, shoot, I'm not gonna be going there anytime soon now, am I? So it's like, it is kind of sucky sometimes because yes, you get to travel the world. Yes, you get to do all these crazy, crazy things, but then you're leaving behind all these people and all these friends. And yes, it's really cool that you get to meet. And you do, and luckily, thanks to the invention of the phone, you do get to keep in connection with most of them. But sometimes it kind of just fades a little bit, and they're just like, "Oh, you haven't messaged that person in a whole year. Oh my gosh!" And right, so it is difficult. I think that's one of those things I would say. It's kind of difficult when you're traveling around like that and moving around. Like I said, me being from America, my whole friends and family, everything I have is 4,800 so miles away and an 8 hour time difference. I can't even play Xbox with the homies anymore because they're you know I'm going to bed by the time they're getting out of bed. So it's one of those, isn't it? But yeah, it's one of those sacrifices you have to make if you want to chase that dream.
Did you find any sort of degree of culture shock when you went to, say, Bala? Because I was looking it up and it's a very small town. It's not like even, you're in Norwich at the minute. It's not even anything like that. And I was just wondering, how do you navigate that culture shock? Or are you kind of insulated to it in a way because you're working, playing football?
Well, I did live in Manchester, so I didn't actually have to live in Bala. No disrespect to Bala. But the culture shock of living in America to England to little city, big city. I think, again, when you're playing football, I just don't think you really notice it because, again, you're so into that whole train, play, eat, sleep, boom, boom, boom. But you're so regimented in your schedule that you don't really think about these things. Like sometimes I like it. You go to like I said, we'd have a home game. We're in Bala, and there's literally one street. And I'm from big old America where I can't even comprehend it. Just having one street, like, where's the Walmart? What are we doing, guys? And so but you have the little cafes and all the little mom and pop shops, and I love them. I think it's really cute. And Bala, like I said, is in a stunning place, and it's a really really sweet group of people, and you walk around the city, walk around your baller kit, everyone would be all, they'd be like, "Oh, how's it, good luck at the game today," and all that. And it is a really nice community, and I'm gonna get a little emotional. I'm gonna miss it because they were really cool, and it was a really really cool place.
Yeah. And I guess, you talk to faith. Is that the main thing that helps you navigate through all this? Because it's such an up and down. It's I can't imagine. A lot of careers are obviously a little bit dodgy at times, but the stability levels are just not there in football more often than not. And I'm just wondering, is that have you just done that practically, or has that been as a result of your faith?
The 100% faith, 100% faith. You know, it's one of those where you need to have faith, I think, to navigate some of these things. I think for me, it's been prayer. It's been just, hey, it's in God's hands. It's not up to me. I can't sit here. I can put in work. You know, I always my favorite analogy ever is obviously we're on a boat. We have the rows. We can row as hard as we want, but obviously the captain of that boat is God, and he will align us where we need to go. Now it's up to us to row that boat. If we don't row it, and we just sit there. Well, not much is gonna happen then, is it? But at the end of the day, it's one of those where it's just like wherever he's gonna push, I'm gonna row, and I'm gonna trust him in that. And that's where not idolizing football is so important because if you idolize it, if it doesn't go well, if it doesn't go right, then you start cursing at the world, then you're angry, then you're bitter. Where if you realize, hey, football is a part of me. It is something that I do. It is something that I enjoy. It is something that has connected me with many things in my life. But at the end of the day, it is a beautiful, beautiful game. But the word game, it is just a game. And it's a game that I make sacrifices for, that I'm passionate for. But I don't ultimately, the way I look at it is I don't want to make more sacrifices for football than I do for Jesus. If I'm making more sacrifices, if I put that same energy that I put into football, grind, work, sleep, eat, and I put that towards Jesus, what am I doing? Like what why am I not doing it that way? And so the moment I think you can look at it like that. And I struggle with this still. I think most everyone it's the hardest battle, isn't it? And so allowing myself to just be like, hey, I love football. I want it. I want to chase it. And I hope that the dream I have aligns with God's plan. You know, I pray that it does. I pray that whatever dream He put in my heart aligns with the plan that He has for me. And I think the moment you start thinking like that, it there's no stress. There's no you're not you know I'm not sitting there going, oh my gosh, am I gonna have the money to do this? Am I gonna have the time to do this? I need to be in shape for this and that and that. Nope. I'm gonna work hard, but I'm also just gonna put my head down and say, Jesus, you take this. This is you. I'm I'll do my work, but ultimately it's not my decision, is it? It's not my I'm not the guy that gets the final say. And I think the moment you sit and look at it like that, like you said, the stress of moving, the stress of stability, it disappears. It's not relevant anymore. But that's hard. That's a hard place to get to. And I still struggle with that sometimes.
And would you say you're like basically willing to go wherever it takes? And are you happy to go to any country in the world really to find that dream? Because I was interested because obviously you played for FC Olympia, was it in the
Mhm.
USL?
Yep.
And I just wondered, I think to myself, in theory, USL2 is like what, the third tier roughly in America? So I was
Yeah.
also intrigued as to why you didn't just sort of, I don't know, stick with it there. I mean, whether your dreams went further afield.
I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously I've had MLS Next Pro and USL Championship, USL One. I've been in that world, but for me, I've always wanted to play in Europe. That's kind of been the big thing for me. Like my my backup plan is saying, all right, I'll play USL One, play USL Championship. That's always been my backup plan. And my main plan is I want to play in Europe. I don't know if it will be the Premier League, but I want to give everything I have. You know, hey, I've played in a Premier League, but
Hey, it's top
you
flight
know,
football. Don't knock it, man.
but for me, it's hey, the dream is I want to play in Europe. I want to play, you know, I want to play for England one day. That there's crazy dreams, and it takes a lot of faith to say it, and you just saying it out loud is even crazier. But you know, those are the dreams I have, and I think staying in America wouldn't have got me there. And so that's for me. It was like, hey, I'm gonna go over to England, and now. heading into the summer, I kind of have a choice of, do I play like a step three, step two? I won't say too much, but play like step three, step two, or do I go over and play in a foreign league, but at a higher level? Germany has been talked about a couple times, and like I said, I have some amazing agents and some amazing people working with me who are making my life a billion times easier. But, like, that's what we talked about earlier is, like, you have that faith, God puts these people in your life, then you're just like, "Okay, I don't need to stress now. I'm fine. I'm all good. I have nothing to worry about." So, that's for me kinda how I've looked at it, and like I said, now I get a nice little week off, and then I'm just right back in that preseason training, everything I got, hard work, and then going to next season and try and really make a name for myself and really try and push and set myself up on for a successful career. I wanna be playing top flight football in a couple of years. I wanna play for England. These are things that I wanna do, and so I started late, so I'm gonna get there probably a little bit later than most people, but I don't think that's any reason to stop. Yeah, okay, I'm a little bit older than most people I'm gonna be trying to compete with. That's fine. Obviously, I'm starting later, but I'm fine with that. And I'm chasing a dream, and it does. When you do say stuff like "I want to play for the national team," "I want to be," and you're not already at that high level, people will look at you a little bit crazy because it is like that is literally just like your average Joe or Bob being like, "Yeah, I'm gonna play for England." Sure, mate. It's mental. I'm gonna play in the top flight. Okay, do it. But then I think you have to speak that stuff into existence. I think manifesting is a huge thing. I think it is important to sit there every day and say, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And I say I pray about it every day. And no matter how crazy it might sound to other people, that's fine. I'm not too concerned with other people's opinions.
Yeah, I think that's a thread that runs through the whole Bible as well. I forget the number because I'm the worst theologian in the world, but it's somewhere in Romans about suffering producing endurance and all of these things producing and culminating in hope. And I think that's what you're embodying, to be honest with you. You've clearly not allowed all these setbacks to overcome you. And I think that's not only a really good indication of your character, but also an indication of what ultimate faith can do and what can carry you through life.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I think if I hadn't have found Christ, I don't think I'd still be playing football. I can tell you I wouldn't. I just wouldn't be. Without having him on your side, everything's going to be difficult. But I think, like you said, imagine having to go through some of these trials and tribulations and not having him there. You'd feel terrible, and you'd feel stressed. You'd feel sick. And I would have given up a long time ago. But knowing I have the creator of the universe on my side, you're like, what am I stressing about? The very thing I'm fearing, well, he created it. I think I think I'll be okay. And I think, like I said, you have that on your side. You're never gonna struggle too bad. I think you're always gonna be okay.
Now, I think I'm going to wrap it up there, but feel free not to answer this is a really hard hitting question, so
Okay.
if you don't feel comfortable, it's fine. In the Cymru League video that you were in, you said you hadn't had a Tesco meal deal. Have you had a Tesco meal deal yet? This is important stuff, mate.
I actually have.
This is what I'm talking about. What'd you have? What was the meal deal?
I went to Tesco. I'm gonna be honest. I have to get this out off my chest. This has been hanging on a heavy heart. I'm a Morrison's guy. Like, Morrison's is the place to go, right? I'm just gonna say it. It's a controversial opinion. I know this might get you some clicks, I know saying this, but Morrison's is where it's at. Tesco is so overrated, it's not even funny.
Oh,
I'm going there. I'm going there. So I got more. I got more.
mate.
M&S, that's where it's really at. That's where it's really at. When I go into M&S, the joy that my heart has, the happiness, I mean, they got the kimchi, they got they got the kimchi, they got the popcorn, they got everything, right? You go on M&S, you're the happiest man alive. You go into Tesco, you're the most depressed man alive. Like, I don't know what we were thinking when we made Tesco, but just get rid of it. I went in there and I got this meal deal. I'm telling you, I don't know what was going on, but I get some sushi. That's problem number one. I don't know why we're getting sushi from Tesco. I got some sushi.
Yeah, definitely.
We got, as always, gotta have your zero sugar Coke, got a little zero sugar, I think Pepsi, to be fair, and then, like, some pineapple, right? That was my little meal deal. Imma be real, one of the worst meals I've ever eaten. I was like, "Oof, yikes." So I thought, "Okay, let's go try this cranberry sandwich that I've heard so much about, right?
Yeah,
Let me have my life changed." I went to a Tesco in Wales as well, so, like, we're at the source pretty much of this
yeah,
hard-hitting question, and I had a cranberry sandwich. So it was like ham, cranberry sauce, which again and I again, let me have a timeout here. American cranberry sauce is different from British cranberry sauce. I
yeah.
have to make this everyone looked at me like I was a psychopath, and I've been made fun of for this like 100 times now, but what do you mean cranberry sauce is different? It is. We have our cranberry is like Jello. It's like a Jello that you can eat,
Yeah,
okay? Y'all's cranberry
yeah,
sauce is some like fruity, it's like bits of cranberry. It's like probably healthier to be fair. I mean, ours is literally just
yeah.
gelatin death, but it's good gelatin death, and you chop that up, you eat that at Thanksgiving. Here, it's like some weird, like, goopy, fruity thing, right? Whatever, cool, I guess. On a sandwich with meat. I don't know what we're doing, but I ate that. I am never one to waste food. I never, ever waste food. I did not finish that sandwich. I just think it should be known I didn't finish the sandwich. It was maybe one of the worst things I've ever eaten. It was awful. I don't know what we're doing. And I'm not someone that's against sweet and savory. I think there's my favorite thing
Mm,
ever is chicken and waffle. Oof, get some fried
yeah,
chicken, put that on waffles, some syrup on that, your life will be changed, right? But the moment we start mixing ham and like fruit and weird, oh no, 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 not happening, not happening. So to answer the question of the cranberry sauce, American cranberry sauce is better, and a cranberry sauce sandwich might be one of the worst things ever on planet Earth. It's up there. Like, I'm talking it's as we talk about bad things that happen in the world, Tesco cranberry sandwich is, like, probably, like, we're talking, like, right there. It's up there. It is a
no,
diabolical thing. What's your opinion on this on the cranberry sandwich? You're gonna say you love it,
I
aren't
can't
you?
do it, mate, at all. No, not at all.
Oh,
Right. You can probably tell by looking at me, right? But my favorite food group is like beige, so
okay.
you'll often find me like loitering outside of Greg's or something.
Right.
Yeah. No, I can't do cranberry sauce with anything. Pretty traditional to have that with your Christmas dinner
Mhm.
and all that. And I just do not get it at all. I'll be honest with you, Leif. I'm not sure I can put this out. This is, you said some pretty wild stuff there, and
Is it wrong, though?
what can we do? No, you're not wrong at all. I'm just throwing you under the bus.
Greg's is an interesting one. I don't mind Greg's.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
I've been to Greg's a couple times. Obviously, it's not really in the healthy eating, but
No.
I had a sausage roll from there. It was very good. It was solid. Very controversial opinions out here. Yeah, it was alright.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Really going for it. Leif, listen, it's been an absolute joy to hear your story. I think it's really inspiring, genuinely. And I just wish you every success going forward. I think you will get there. I think you've got a great attitude. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And hopefully it can provide inspiration for other people as well. There's this little bit at the end I sort of call any other business. Is there anything else you'd like to share? You might have a business on the side selling proper cranberry sauce to British people. I don't
Should
know.
start one up.
So anything you wish to share, you know,
No,
the floor is yours.
yeah, I definitely could like I said, I could have definitely gone into a lot more greater detail on a lot of stuff. I kinda sped run some stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun interview. Obviously, I'd love to talk more in depth about especially the faith side, and hopefully in a year's two time, the football will be a lot more interesting too. Not just I sat on the bench. so
Yeah,
hopefully we can do this interview in a year or two and it will be a lot more interesting in terms of what I've done in football and then maybe have some more talk about the actual faith itself. But yeah, ultimately really enjoyed it. And this is like my second real ever interview. So that's always fun to be a part of. And Hope I didn't do too bad. Hopefully, I guess only time will tell. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was really enjoyable to be interviewed by you, and hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Absolutely. I'm always fascinated. As a very unathletic man, it's nice to hear what it's like to be a footballer. We all have that dream, I think. I played 2 seasons like on a Saturday afternoon, and I are so bad at football. It's untrue. It's like not even you would not have looked at me and gone, "Hey, I reckon we can coach this kid in a certain way, and he might do." No, I think I had issues just facing the right way on the pitch. So no, it's really interesting for me to hear from a player and hear about what it's like, basically. So no, I think you've got a really interesting story. I really do. If you wish to find out more about Leaf and see what he's up to, you can follow him at Instagram on at Leif Hunter GK. You can find Saturday Service at Facebook Footy on X and Saturday Service Football on Facebook and Instagram. Other than that, Leif, thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate it, and I thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. And if it makes you feel better, don't worry. If you ever see me play basketball, I would look freakishly unathletic as well. So don't worry. We all have things that we are good and bad at. God made us beautifully in our own little way. Some of those things aren't great. Like I said, you ever see me hold basketball? You see me shoot. I'm almost sure it's a crime against humanity. So I totally get it. But yeah, hey, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Thank you.
God bless.